Любим модел на поколения от 1972 до днес. Произведен в Япония, новият Honda Civic, пълен хибрид с 184 конски сили е тук. С топ оборудване, безопасност от Honda Sensing, върхова хибридна ефективност и изключително пътно поведение. Може да е твой от 299 евро на месец. Тествай при най-близкия дилър на Honda. Honda – силата на мечтите.
Днес в бюрото на Константин Вълков ни гостува един остър ум в глобалната журналистика. Човек, който десетилетия наред разчита кодовете на властта. Лондон, Вашингтон, това е Джарард Бейкър, който е главен редактор на The Wall Street Journal в периода 2013-2018. Днес е основен политически анализатор и колумнист на изданието. Джерард Бейкър е човек, който не се страхува да анализира възхода на популизма, бъдещето на консервативната мисъл, истинското лице на глобалния елит. Той ще бъде гост на Delphi Economic Forum. Hope to see you soon in Delphi as well, and good to have you on the program.
Yeah, thank you very much, Constantine. Looking forward to seeing you there.
Thank you. Let's start with Viktor Orban. Its influence is potentially waning. Suddenly, the focus has shifted to Bulgaria, not only because I am from Bulgaria, but to Bulgaria's former president, Rumen Radев, who has taken the extraordinary step of leaving the presidency to pursue executive power on an anti-oligarch, in a way, Moscow-friendly platform. Given the leaked context of Orban's past dealings with the Kremlin, do you believe these leaders were ever truly serving national interests, or as their opponents say, they are strategic assets for Putin?
Well, thanks, Constantine. It's a very important question, obviously, as you say, particularly for what's happening in Bulgaria. We've just seen this election in Hungary. Look, I think it's fair to say that Orban in particular, some of these other populist leaders, we can maybe talk about them separately, but Orban started out, I think, with obviously a very interesting, fascinating sort of political career. Started out as, essentially one of those who, helped lead Hungary out of the Soviet period, and clearly, favoured sort of at that point, membership of the EU and the alignment with the West at that point. But I think he genuinely became, as many other people in Europe did, disillusioned with the direction of European Union politics, shall we say, let it put it that way. The sort of progressive elites that kind of controlled European institutions, the broad political thrust of European governments, whether it be on things like climate change, immigration, issues of cultural issues like sexuality and religion and gender and things like that. So I think that again, let's be clear, is a European-wide phenomenon, and it's also very much a phenomenon here in the United States, helping explain why Donald Trump got elected. So I think he genuinely started out articulating a frustration and increasing resentment that many people had with the direction of European elite politics, if you like. But it's also clear then that his if you like, his kind of confrontational or oppositional stance towards the EU leadership, clearly, and the EU as institutions, clearly became something that was very much aligned with the interests of Russia. Russia wants to see, broadly speaking, obviously a weakened West. It wants to see division within NATO and the European Union. And so just as it's done, I think, with some of these other populist parties in Europe, both in Central and Eastern Europe and in Western Europe, I think Vladimir Putin seized an opportunity. I think that Orban then became, in my view anyway, too closely aligned with Putin. I think saw the opportunity that alignment with Putin gave him to help him in his campaign, if you like, to undermine the EU. I think though they had different reasons for doing it, they ended up in broadly the same place. And I think it also has to be said, and I don't think I'm saying anything too controversial here, that there's been a high measure of corruption in Hungary over the years, and I think under Orban, and I think that kind of corruption plus the sort of what I would call mild authoritarianism of Orbanism, if you like, also kind of pushed him or aligned him more closely with Putin and with Russia. So the overall point I'd make is while I think it's unfair to describe Orban and some of these other populist leaders as tools of the Kremlin. They may be useful idiots in the famous Lenin phrase. They may be useful witting or unwitting collaborators with the Kremlin, but the ideals that they stand for, the politics they stand for, I think are legitimate and shouldn't just be seen as a way of weakening Western unity, Western liberalism, a way of weakening Western institutions. I think they are legitimate concerns.
Why do you think the pro-Russian brand remains such a potent electoral force in the East, while the rest of the West views it as an existential threat still?
Well, again, it's interesting, isn't it? And you Konstantin, you're closer to it than I am, so you can obviously speak particularly to what's gone on in Bulgaria. But you've seen it in Hungary clearly, and you've seen it in maybe arguably in Czechia too, or elsewhere, in a milder form. But then again, against that, you do have, robustly, if you like, confrontational with regard to Russia positions in places like Poland, right? Poland is sort of historically not exactly friendly territory for Russia. I know we saw there's, we can argue about what exactly happened with the direction of Polish politics over the last 20 years or so. But I think it's pretty clear, especially since the invasion of Ukraine, that there isn't a lot of that even populist forces in Poland are not particularly friendly towards Russia. So it is complicated. I suspect part of the answer is, but we've seen it with the Visegrad countries to some extent. What you're talking about, the phenomenon you're describing, I suppose to some extent it's a reflection of the old division of Eastern and Western Europe. I think it's interesting because those countries, the countries that came out, Bulgaria obviously is a good example, but the countries that came out of the old the old Warsaw Pact, the Baltics, Poland, Bulgaria, Romania, they had particularly strong reasons to want to be aligned with the West, particularly aligned with NATO. And maybe, and then of course became members of NATO in almost all cases. And I think maybe in some ways, perhaps that's for many people, it's still slightly jarring to have, even in the space of 35 years, to have moved from being a satellite of Russia, being part of that orbit, to being now part of a military alliance and an economic alliance that is defines itself to some extent in contradistinction to Russia. I think in places also, I think one of the other interesting things, I know, I'm not familiar with what's going on in Bulgaria, but if you take a look at what's happening in Germany, again, Eastern Germany, that's where very much the AfD, the Alternative for Deutschland, has a lot of its support. It's quite interesting that the old Soviet-friendly GDR is where a lot of that support comes from. And I suspect maybe part of that is economic too, right? Because I think it is true in Eastern Germany that the opportunities of Western alignment, of joining the European Union, obviously in Eastern Germany's case, first of all, unifying Germany, becoming part of the European Union, becoming part of NATO, they haven't been quite, they haven't realized the economic benefits perhaps as much as they thought they would. And so the appeal of the West maybe, isn't quite as striking because they've been a little bit disappointed in some of their economic outcomes. But, I think it's, despite what you said, it's also true that you've got parties in Western Europe that if they're not aligned with Russia, then they're certainly part of this sort of populist group, and they have certainly flirted with Russia. I mean, even in the case of, less true with Meloni's party in Italy, but the Lega in Italy, the coalition partner, that's been a very Russia-friendly party. That's in Italy. The National Rally in France, again, partly because of Ukraine, has distanced itself more recently, but again has kind of flirted with Russia. Even Reform UK in Britain, which is the dominant sort of populist right-wing party. Again, it's distanced itself because of Ukraine, but its leader, Nigel Farage, has certainly, he used to work for Russia Today, the television network. He certainly has been, so we say, at least associated with Russia. So it's not I don't think it's a straightforward divide. I think, again, Russia has seized the opportunity in all these cases to deepen the divisions within Europe by backing these populist parties. And the populist parties, to some extent, many of them have kind of reciprocated by being friendly to Russia.
Yes. So we will have elections this weekend, and our former president, who will probably his newly formed party will be number one. He just said that cheap Russian oil is just 2 days away from Bulgaria. And is this a genuine economic pragmatism? What do you think?
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, and again, I think, as I said, that to some extent the willingness of some of those people, particularly in Eastern and Central Europe, to at least be more open to sympathetic to Russia, despite the Ukraine invasion, is in large part an economic. We know the damage that the high energy prices have done to the European economy, and I think to some extent also this feeds into the populist narrative a little bit, because one of the things that the sort of European elites were very keen on for the last 25 years was climate change and net zero measures. In most of these countries, the populists have campaigned saying this is all not, as Donald Trump has here, this climate change stuff is all nonsense, and we need to focus on getting as much cheap energy out of the ground as we can. And so when Russia, Russia obviously the major source of energy in Europe, and especially in Eastern and Central Europe, I think it does have an appeal. I think. I personally, I think it's short-sighted, because I think we saw very clearly what happened, say, for example, again in Germany, in the period, from 2005 to say 2015, when Germany was extremely dependent on cheap Russian energy, and repeatedly that dependency repeatedly made the German government under Angela Merkel kind of turn a blind eye to Russia's excesses, invading Crimea, invading for the first time eastern Ukraine. So while I understand the economic pressure that the attraction of cheap energy, which as your former president says, could presumably be around the corner if deals can be made, it's politically and strategically somewhat short-sighted, because we've seen what happened in Ukraine.
J.D. Vance's support for Orban backfired, obviously, this week following the election loss, and reports of leaks to Moscow as well. Why do leading American conservatives still view Orban as a strategic asset when he has clearly functioned as a Russian proxy within NATO?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are two or three reasons. Firstly, I think there is, again, a genuine ideological identification with some of the things that Orban has been talking about, whether it be anti-immigration, obviously, preservation of European or Western, whatever, Christian, Judeo-Christian civilization and culture. Some of the things on energy, for example. There's an alignment between the populist right here, as most sort of powerfully articulated by someone like J.D. Vance. Tucker Carlson, was very much part of this phenomenon too, and the Orban government, and it is the most. It's interesting. It's only a relatively small country, Hungary, a population of only 10 million people, but it has been for now 15 or so years this kind of continuing experiment in this, if you like, and it's held up by a lot of American conservatives, American populists, as this example of how Western civilization can revive itself. And so that's part of it. It is partly an ideological thing. There's no question whatsoever that Orban has been seen to some extent as a kind of crack in the EU's unity. And again, for a lot of people in the United States, but in other parts too, people who take, for example, in Britain, I originally come from Britain, the anti-European Union sentiment in Britain, which has obviously been very strong and resulted in the Brexit vote in 2016, was looking for that people who supported the idea of Britain leaving the European Union, were always looking for allies in Europe who were equally willing to sort of undermine the institutions or challenge the institutions of the European Union. I think in America, that's seen as a good thing too. I think the European Union is seen by the right partly for the sort of cultural reasons I've just talked about, but also more generally for economic reasons. They think the European Union is a sort of protectionist trading bloc. So anything that can kind of undermine the European Union institutions is seen in that way. And for some of them, let's be honest, you talk about, even though there's sort of the pro-Putin element of these parties, and Orban in particular, for some Americans, including, frankly, Donald Trump, that isn't a problem. That's kind of an attraction. There's, we again, Tucker Carlson is a good example. He, very friendly towards Orban, but also very friendly towards Vladimir Putin. Yeah. Carlson has made a bit of a name for himself by being a kind of being an advocate of Russia, and talking about how Russia is, under Putin, is reverting to Christian values and ideals, and that's the model that he would like for the West. So to some extent, it's not so much that Putin is a problem for them; it's that Putin and Russia is part of the appeal. I think it's genuinely true. Unfortunately, in Donald Trump's case, Trump, I think, probably kind of both admires Putin as a strong man, and probably is more strategically sympathetic to Russia than he is towards the European Union. So, I think it's that combination of ideological and political factors that they thought, or that made Orban an attractive figure for them.
With J.D. Vance failed Iran diplomacy and his, in a way, ill-timed backing of the now defeated Orban, has he effectively disqualified his foreign policy credentials? And does this mark a decisive win for Marcus Rubio 2028 race?
Yeah.
What do you think?
It's, again, a good question. I would add to J.D. Vance's unfortunate failure to sway anybody in the vote in Hungary, and his failure to secure a deal in Pakistan with the Iran negotiations. Slightly awkwardly for him, I'm not sure how much you've been following it, but President Trump's attack on the Pope today is not very helpful for J.D. Vance either, as a Catholic, and someone who sort of wears his Catholic credentials very prominently. So, there's no question that Vance's kind of international policy, foreign policy credentials are taking a bit of a hit. I think it's too early, obviously, to say in terms of the politics of where does the Republican Party go after Trump. Trump is still very much the dominant figure. There isn't really much ideology to Donald Trump. It's about the exercise of power and about the self-promotion. It's very unclear where the party will go after Trump. It will move somewhat along the same trajectory as it's been under Trump. But it's not clear exactly what will happen, and then it's not clear in that case then what whether Vance's kind of, if you like, sort of hardcore, especially on the question of Europe, sort of hardcore. Civilizational attack on Europe, whether that will survive. It's interesting because it's an issue that very much animates the sort of the intellectual right in this country for the reasons we've just talked about. It doesn't really resonate with most voters in a Republican primary. They're not going to be. Vance is not going to be making a big pitch to say that he's trying to reverse European civilizational erasure, to coin that phrase, because it just doesn't really matter that much. But I do think, if there is, and also I think we need to be a little bit careful about drawing a distinction between, say, Vance and Rubio, because they're both, again, they both do whatever Donald Trump essentially wants them to do. Now, Rubio may do it in a slightly more palatable, friendly tone, as he did at Munich. The contrast between the two Munich speeches, Vance's last year and Rubio's this year, was significant in terms of tone, but in terms of substance, it's not really that different. But I think, the basic answer to your question is that Vance is going to be, to some extent, and the other really important thing to say about Vance on foreign policy is that he's let it be known that he, of course, wasn't in favor of the war with Iran.
Yes.
Now, that can work both ways for him. If the war continues to go badly, and frankly, I think it is going badly right now, then, Vance can, arguably make the case that, well, I wouldn't have done this, and that might strengthen his credentials. Obviously, the risk for him there is that he can't really risk at all being seen to be in any kind of opposition to Trump, because he would lose a lot of support. So he's in. I think his foreign policy credentials have taken a hit over things like this, but I don't think they matter all that much. But I think as we see, the key thing is going to be how the Iran war unfolds and what the implications will be for the Republican Party of the outcome of that war.
But speaking of Iran, you've noted in an article that for Iran, simply surviving is winning. If the West, how to say, is playing a game of total victory, while the enemies are playing a game of endurance, is the United States fundamentally, structurally unsuited for 21st century warfare?
Well, that's been the picture for, and by the way, actually not just the United States, right? We've for one could argue now for 50 years or so, we've had this story of asymmetric hot wars in which superpowers, nuclear powers, powers with massive conventional superiority have fought wars against much weaker, smaller powers and haven't really won them. Again, the United States in Iraq and Afghanistan. Now, we could obviously say the United States in Iraq in 1991, the first Iraq war, was obviously a success, but it was a very limited operation, very much limited to, getting Iraq's forces out of Kuwait. But it didn't, the wider operation of trying to achieve sustainable and, stable regime change in Afghanistan and Iraq didn't really succeed. But you could say the same with, Russia in Afghanistan in the 1980s. Same sort of thing. It supposedly had massive superiority, didn't manage to, over 10 years, failed in Afghanistan. It's now been at war in Ukraine for getting on for 4.5 years. Again, supposedly with massive conventional superiority, hasn't prevailed there either. So I think this is a phenomenon that we're seeing. As you say, it is the asymmetric warfare, that the different objectives are simply, we have to attain all of our objectives in order to call this a success. The other, our enemies, and again, whether that be, Iran in this case, whether for Russia it be Ukraine or Afghanistan, they simply have to survive. And that is, I do think that is a phenomenon of late 20th and 21st century conflict, that however big the military superiority, it is the lack of, there's a lack of first of all, the determination of the country that's being attacked to defend itself is generally stronger. And this is particularly true for the United States, obviously less true for Russia, given what we've seen there. But the tolerance for losses, the tolerance for sacrifice in a country like the United States to achieve strategic objectives in far-off countries that Americans have literally never heard of, is pretty low. So, again, as bad as the Iraq War was, America lost about 4,000 men in that, 4,000 in Afghanistan, and couldn't really achieve its ultimate objectives in either place. America lost 58,000 men in Vietnam over more than 10 years. So there is a sense, I think, that the threshold of pain that the American people are willing to tolerate for, again, these far-off military objectives is quite small.
Speaking about Iran and Russia, what is your definition of global superpower? I mean, the opponents of Russia, they say that, let's say 25% of Russians lack gas in a gas exporting nation, probably the same percentage, 20-25, still use outdoor toilets. Yeah. So what is a global superpower? Or those countries, they trade the basic dignity of its citizens for geopolitical theater, or what?
So I think the definition of a superpower is probably, and again, we need to be quite flexible because there are different types of superpower and different sizes of superpower. But the sort of typical standard definition of superpower that we've had is a nation, a country, maybe a bloc, but usually a nation that is able to project strategic capability and to advance strategic interests in a sort of a very much a forward-leaning way around the world, right? So it's not, so whether it's the United States, obviously, which can do that, Russia to some extent can do, Soviet Union could certainly do it, obviously in the Cold War, Russia to some extent inherited a lot of that. China obviously now is the other major superpower. And this especially in the case of Russia, this is less tied to necessarily to economic, to prosperity, to economic advance, as you say. I mean, the joke. I remember growing up in the Cold War, and one British politician used to refer to the Soviet Union as, describing it as economically weak but militarily powerful. He would describe the Soviet Union as the Ivory Coast with missiles. And broadly speaking, its economic performance was and still is terrible. But it has this, because thanks to its nuclear capabilities in particular, and still a very large conventional military, it has that ability to project itself. China is interesting. China's, obviously has achieved much more economic success than Russia over the last 25 years, but it's still actually, your point about, Russians, living in relatively poor conditions, even after 25 years, 30 years of remarkable growth in China, China is still a long, long way behind the European Union or the United States in terms of income per head. Actually, real income per head. Most Chinese still have a standard of living well below Europe or the US. But again, of course, partly because of nuclear weapons, partly because of the sheer scale of China's armed forces and the amount that they've spent on it, China is a superpower and able to project itself. I mean, the interesting example of how economic power doesn't necessarily, two examples that economic power doesn't necessarily translate into strategic power. We've talked about Russia, which is one example, but the other one is, something is the European Union, right? I mean, the European Union, as we just said, is enormously, economically is enormously prosperous. Okay, it hasn't grown as rapidly as the United States over the last 10 years, and it's got economic challenges. But in terms of GDP per capita, it far outstrips Russia, and it even outstrips China, and yet it has no real independent strategic projection capability at all, and that's a decision, that's a choice that was made, and maybe that's a choice that's going to have to be unmade by Europeans.
On the upcoming elections in the US, but probably on the upcoming elections everywhere, finally, to ask you this: if people, let's say, just want peace and quiet, but both parties, the major parties in every single contest everywhere, keep acting extreme, is the system now built to give us exactly what we don't want?
Yes, it is. I mean, the institutions of America, the major political institutions of America, there's no question that they are deepening and strengthening the partisan extremism that is dividing the country. The primary system of elections here, which we have, is a recipe, frankly, for extreme outcomes rather than middle of the road, middle ground outcomes. A relatively small number of people vote in the Republican and Democratic primaries. They tend to be more politically motivated. They tend to be more extreme, maybe too strong a word, but they tend obviously more to the extremes of their parties than regular voters do. They tend to be different. They tend to be more interested in politics and all of those things, which makes them unrepresentative by their very nature of the people. So the primary system, is producing these, is helping to produce this polarization. The way in which the House of Representatives is constructed, in particular, the gerrymandering that's gone on, that does the same thing. I think many of our non-government institutions, I think the media is essentially now in this country is increasingly incentivized financially to be partisan. You either have a right-wing audience or a left-wing audience that pays for your journalism, your news, your information. That's accentuating the divide. To some extent, arguably, technology is having the same effect. Social media, the emphasis on algorithms that provide people only with information that agrees with them and that they are sympathetic to, rather than broader information. So yeah, these government and non-governmental institutions are all now working in the same direction, which is to deepen and widen the divides in American society. Is it reversible? Yes, of course it's reversible. And America has been through periods of hyperpolarization before. We'll see how we get out of this. It might be disillusionment with the existing political structures, which we're seeing. One of the interesting phenomena is Trump is right now very unpopular here. Approval ratings, are in the 30-something, 35, 36%. That follows on after Joe Biden, who was extremely unpopular too. And he follows on after Donald Trump's first term, where Donald Trump was never very popular either. So there's a sense of dissatisfaction among the American public. If if the Republicans were to lose the 2028 election, which looks likely right now, we would have had a different presidential result in essentially in 5 straight elections, which has never happened before in the United States. 2012 with Obama, 2016 with Trump, 2020 with Biden, 24 with Trump, 28 with the Democrats. So that would demonstrate to me that the system, to some extent, it's not exactly working, but it is showing up.
It's correcting
how
itself.
how disaffected people are with the system, and that could change. I think technology could help change it too. I think things like AI may actually become may have a benign effect, because it may make people more. There's some evidence that AI, for example, is producing is moving, is highlighting, is prioritizing information that is more sort of objectively agreeable than social media. Social media emphasizes the extremes. AI seems to sort of favor the middle, as far as we can tell so far. So that might help too. So it's not. I don't think the game is up. I don't think American democracy is finished. But there's no question that, say, for those reasons I've said, the trends are towards deeper and deeper division and more polarization.
Джарард Бейкър from the Wall Street Journal. Good to have you on the program, and see you in Delphi.
Constantine, thank you very much indeed. I look forward to seeing you there.
Thank you.
Любим модел на поколение от 1972 до днес. Произведен в Япония. Новият Honda Civic, пълен хибрид с 184 конски сили е тук. Стоп оборудване, безопасност от Honda Sensing, върхова хибридна ефективност и изключително пътно поведение. Може да е твой от 299 евро на месец. Тествай при най-близкия дилър на Honda. Honda – силата на мечтите.